What's up, everybody? If you like the kind of work that I do here, do consider supporting my demonetized channel. Links to all of that in the description. So, more than a year ago now, I told you guys that the plague was going to come in waves, and the reaction to the plague was going to be used as a means of social control and to implement all these new policies, things, systems. And then some of my opponents who called me a whole bunch of names, wish that I would get sick. I have yet to have a cold, guys. I tend to get those once or twice a year, sometimes even the flu. Ever since this whole thing started, I have yet to get the sniffles. No mask for me. Anyway, some of my opponents who wished me death have since scurried away with their tail between their legs, never to be seen again. But they posited their hypothesis. Let's see whose hypothesis had more predictive power. Their hypothesis was that, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, guys. Just grin and bear. Couple of weeks, and it's all gonna go away. Oh man. Year and a half or so later, and we're still flattening this curve. Your perception of time is a little bit warped, sillies. So here we are. Various countries experiencing a second, third, fourth tsunami. And, it's an ongoing thing and cycle. So again, we all have ideas of the world around us. We all make different predictions. It just so happens that some of us with their eyes open, and shout out to all the people out there who have their eyes open. It just so happens then that we tend to be correct about certain things more often than some other people, right? The normies, let's just put it to them, let's just say it how it is. For example, chemtrails was supposedly a theory of some kind of conspiracy, right? Not that long ago. And then various governments, organizations admitted to it. I mean, all you had to do is just look up and see a plane, right, spraying something. What are the chances that those were chemicals? I mean, how? This is how fucking stupid people are, right? Geoengineering was a conspiracy theory not that long ago, right? Then they started making movies about how it's done more or less to prime all the sheep and make them accept it. And now they're coming out and admitting it, right? Yeah, we've been doing this for a long, long time. But it was a theory of a conspiracy, right? Even though you could have gone and basically read papers where they talk about this. You could have gone and hired a company to try to make it rain if you're a farmer somewhere in Arizona or something, right? You could have literally, even something like 3 decades ago, paid some people with some planes to inject something into the atmosphere over your big ass property to try to make it rain. I mean, come on, man. It's funny. I made a video about this, but like the Ecuadorian government was gonna have a earthquake drill, right? One day at 9 a.m. And then at 9 a.m. that day, the earth shook. Imagine that. What did they mean by drill, right? And how deep? Anyway, moving right along, um, you know, not to say that people who have these theories of various conspiracies are going to be right every single time, but I mean, in comparison to the sheep, like, you guys suck, right? You have no idea of what's going on. Like, you're completely and utterly oblivious to what's going on. Thus, if you don't even know the ground that you stand on, right? You cannot even recognize that which is happening around you. You're going to be that much less likely to be able to predict that which is happening, right? And this happens time and time and time again, and they just don't wake up. Anyway, I'm just gonna shut up and, well, shut up about that and try to wrap this up really quickly. Give you something to think about. So, Japan, for example, started vaccinating. Well, depends on what source you look at and what vaccine, but as early as late April, right? Or actually mid-February, right? So they started vaccinating a few months ago, a couple months ago. And then they had, another wave. Same here in Ecuador. They started vaccinating, it must have been about a month ago. For those of you who live in Ecuador or somewhere else, know your rights, basically. They started vaccinating not that long ago, and then we got more cases, another wave, more restrictions. And trust me, just look around what's been happening in your country or here or there or around the world, and you'll see that same pattern, right? People start getting vaccinated, and then it doesn't seem to work. And, the explanation is that new variants and blah, 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 all this other stuff. Man, so how do we go, I don't know how long, but forever seemingly, with all these viruses around us, and none of them doing this before, right? To this degree, definitely not. Like, okay, if we are to assume evolution, right? And I'm just asking questions here. Obviously, I don't know anything, right? This has nothing to do with medicine. I mean, I guess it's some kind of information, but it's not medical. So relax, YouTube. Chill out, guys. Read this title and think about it. Think about what it actually means, right? We're going to cut through some media bullshit in just a second, but let me take a sip of my coffee. What was I talking about? Yeah, how is it that, this deadly virus, supposedly, I mean, where's the evidence for that to begin with? Mutates to be even more deadly in some cases, right? Where's the evidence for that? But this is what's happening, supposedly. Now, according to this evolutionary theory, right? And it's hilarious how someone, when I said that you couldn't have the theory of the germ theory without the evolutionary theory, someone said, well, the germ theory came before, blah, blah, blah. I mean, first of all, Darwin's evolutionary theory is based on a theory that's so much older than that. But even if you look at Darwin's evolutionary theory, just because it came after the germ theory, that doesn't mean that it didn't inform the germ theory, and vice versa. Like, it's the simple fact that they exist on a continuum and they overlap, that they inform one another, and they work. They're being used to explain one another by all these sheep doctors. By the way, shout out to all the doctors. Can one of you, some of you, any of you, send me a study showing Just a study, not to even say that it's true, but just send me a study showing that they isolated SARS-CoV-2 or any of the subsequent variants. Not saying that they isolated it, but actually isolated it from everything else around it. Do we know what isolate means? I'm not saying the study doesn't exist. Of course it has to, right, YouTube? I just want to read it because I'm, really interested. So link it to me, doctor. Fucking sheep. Anyway. So how does this virus evolve to be more deadly when it's more detrimental to the virus to be deadly, right? If it infects and kills the host, then it's likely that the virus stops there, right? With the dead host. Versus a virus that's not that deadly. If it keeps you alive, right? Then you get to walk around. Better yet, if you don't have any symptoms, right? I don't understand how you could be sick without symptoms, but hey, new normal. Wouldn't it be more advantageous for this so-called pathogen to, well, not even manifest itself in any way, shape, or form? If it just wants to be replicated, right? It cannot replicate on its own. It needs you to replicate. How'd that work? Wouldn't it make more sense evolutionarily for it to not even manifest itself in any way, shape, or form? No symptoms, right? Wouldn't that be evolutionarily perfect or better for it? So how is it evolving to be more deadly and then at the same time surviving and spreading, right? It doesn't make sense. Or if it does, make it make sense. Anyway, moving right along. I saw this headline maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 by now. Israel records no daily deaths for the first time in 10 months, right? Why? Well, bam. I guess they bucked the trend. And the implication is that, well, it's because they're the most vaccinated country on the planet. That's why they haven't recorded any new deaths. Does it tell you there have been no new deaths? Or did they simply not record any new deaths? Right? You don't even have to read between the lines. They're telling you exactly what's going on. Mocking the sheep and communicating amongst themselves. Letting the people in the know, those who have their eyes open, right? Either communicating with their buddies who have their eyes open or mocking other people who are not in their club, but also have their eyes open, right? They didn't record any. Does that mean that no one died? Or does it mean they just didn't record any deaths, right? But, this was all very predictable. The more you test, the more cases you'll have. The less you test, the fewer cases you'll have. If you don't test, you won't have any new cases, right? If you don't diagnose, no one will die of that. Does that mean that people aren't dying? Or are the deaths just not being recorded? What does that mean? Well, the article tells you. The title tells you exactly what's happening. They didn't record any deaths. What does that mean? Well, that means Israel lost its pencil. That's what that means. Thanks for watching.